Yeah, I guess this looks okay. Hey everybody, it's me, Joey.T.Cartoon.P. I just got back from seeing Pacific Rim and I figured I'd do a vlog on it. I don't often do vlogs. I mean, to be honest with you, I kind of hate the voice. I kind of hate the sound of my voice and I hate the way I mumble, so I kind of stay away from doing vlogs unless I see something that's worth talking about. And this movie happens to be one of those things that I think I would love to just talk about. I found myself enjoying the movie a lot for a number of reasons, and before I go ahead and talk about that, I figured I may as well talk about my background with going into this movie. If most people notice, this movie has a large influence on Japanese culture, Japanese media, sort of the giant monsters and giant robots, the animes and mangas and Studio Toho movies like Godzilla. And to be fair, I was never a big anime fan growing up. I do like movies that are animated in the style of animator, that are animated from Japan. One of my favorite animations above all else is Akira. I absolutely love that movie. I don't watch a lot of the TV shows and anime. I may have watched the old Astro Boy and Speed Racer shows only because those are considered like one of the best ones. A couple of episodes of Gigantor, but that was like a long time ago. I do love Studio Ghibli. I mean, who doesn't love Studio Ghibli? They're like the Japanese Pixar. And I do like... there's this other Japanese movie called Paprika that I think is fairly underappreciated. It's a very good Japanese animated movie, a very good animated movie in general. And for the last I heard, they wanted to do a live-action adaptation of that film, and I think it was the director of Neverending Story who wanted to do an adaptation of it, which I thought would be perfect because the movie deals with dreams and a fantasy world. And I guess going back, again, one of my favorite animated movies of all time just happens to be a Japanese animation called Akira. I always felt it had a level of depth, but above all else, I don't really find myself being a fan of Japanese animation. I mean, to put it frankly, I just find most Japanese animes to be they're stylized, but sometimes they feel very generic. They almost feel like they come out of like a cookie cutter. And I feel like after a while, it becomes stale. It becomes commercial, and they're more mature. You could make the argument that they tackle more mature topics than Western animations, but at the same time, the way I see it, Osamu Tezuka, if I'm saying his first name right, I apologize again, was a big fan of Western animation, and he's considered the godfather of manga and godfather of modern anime, and he was deeply influenced by Western animation, except he wanted to take what the Disney style and make it more current and more contemporary, which is why you see a lot of the films deal with issues like World War II and the nuclear explosion, which I'll get to that into my to talk about Pacific Rim, because I think they tackle that issue too. I guess you could say it's almost homage, but it's almost embedded in the culture, but I'll talk about that later. So yeah, going into this, not a huge fan of anime. I wouldn't consider myself an otaku. I do love animation, so I can't say that I completely ignore all anime. As far as the giant monster films, I'm kind of ambivalent, more so than I am on anime. Growing up, I had a neighbor who was a giant tall monster type. He loved those films. He had like all the Godzilla films he could, and he lent me two of those Studio Toho films. One, I apologize if I'm saying the studio's name wrong, but that's the last time I heard it was Studio Toho anyways, but it's been a while. One of the films was Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. I thought that was okay. But the one I really liked was Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, because it had like time travel, and as a kid I kind of loved that element. I mean, I would say I'm ambivalent because when I was younger, I did love. There was a marathon of Godzilla movies, and there was even the Godzilla TV show, the Hanna-Barbera produced one. Most people say it's shit, but who cares? I enjoyed it. But yeah, I kind of like the giant monsters. I mean, who from the '90s didn't like Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? I never got into Super Sentai or anything. So yeah, I say I'm ambivalent because I kind of got older and I've noticed that most of it's just cornball. It's corny. It doesn't hit me like it did when I was a kid, so I kind of just ignored it as I got older. But otherwise, going into this film, I was more so looking forward to seeing a new Guillermo del Toro movie. If I'm saying his name pronounced, I heard it's pronounced Guillermo, so I'm gonna say Guillermo del Toro making a new movie. Big fan of the Hellboy films. Love Pan's Labyrinth. I haven't seen many of his. I haven't seen. I think the movie was The Orphan or The Orphanage. I haven't seen that film, but I heard it was really good. I might want to check that one out. But I love his style. I love his sense of humor. And if we can go ahead and call Josh Whedon the godfather of, if we can call him the king of sci-fi, the geek king of sci-fi, we may as well call Guillermo del Toro the geek hand of sci-fi, because he definitely does work well with the sci-fi genre. So in that respect, I was looking forward to this film. Big fan of the Hellboy films, if I said that already. So going into Pacific Rim, there's a lot of Japanese influence. It's being directed by one of my favorite directors. I wouldn't say like top directors, but he's like, I appreciate his work. Going in to Pacific Rim, my expectations are right in the middle. When I left, I was very satisfied. It was a very satisfying movie. It made me awe. It made me punch in the air a couple of times. It made me root for the characters, despite how cliched it can get at times. But altogether, it was a very fun movie. And where do we start? What's the premise? There is a dimensional rift in the ocean, in the Pacific Ocean, which, fair enough. If you're going to have a movie that references Japanese culture, you may as well have it in the Pacific Ocean. And from this rift, you have creatures called kaiju, giant, I want to say Japanese, but type is giant monsters that change and somehow come through, and they destroy cities, devastate everything, clear paths, causes the world major destruction. And in order to get them to control the efforts, we Americans, all armed forces around the world, collaborate to create these giant mech suits that would fight these monsters, and it leads to this giant world war. This is like World War K, World War Kaiju. And it is just, it devastates the land. We see the impact it has. Cities are leveled, people die, there's casualties of war. It's pretty dark, I'm not gonna lie. And I like that they take this film and mention that it is a war that's been going on for years. It starts present day and moves its way into into their present, which is, I'd say, 15 years in the future, in the year 2025. About 15 years. I'm just ballparking, maybe a little bit, like 23. Who cares? And our hero is a young pilot who has a backstory. He was one of the guys in the mech suits. They're called Jaegers. He is he had a brother. Basically, the suits are powered through, and I really like this as the psych students. So the suits themselves require brain power, and basically, he and his brother would pilot these giant suits. And because they're brothers, they share a strong bond, therefore they could connect easily and control the giant mech suit. And, well, it comes to a point, I'm going to spoil in this vlog. If you want to stay away, I wouldn't want to go any further, but I don't care. Basically, his brother dies. It causes him a lot of burden. It keeps him away from operating the giant suit. Cut back 5 years later, he's working in construction. He's, typical back, I don't want to deal with that anymore. I mean, that's something we've seen in most action films anyways. And the character by Idris Elba, great actor, by the way. I love Idris Elba. He tells the pilot to come back and, because at this point, the government is, they realize that they gotta just stop it entirely. They can't just keep fighting the kaijus. At this point, they just need to find a way to keep them from coming to our world entirely, cut off the drift, and at this point, they want to cut all the pilots together. And because he's the only pilot who is able to operate the Jaeger as one person and have complete control of it, he's suited for the job to come down to Hong Kong. Again, appropriate. This is, you know, oh, now I sound racist for saying it's Japan. Not Japan, but anyways. They get everybody together. Again, this is why I hate these vlogs. Like, you're going to hear me mumble and make mistakes like constantly. I'm like, I don't want to make mistakes. But yeah, basically they fly the pilot to Hong Kong with all the other Jaeger pilots. And one of them is played by Warlow from this current season of True Blood. And it's kind of funny because you see him as a dick, and throughout the whole first half of the season so far in True Blood, he's playing this innocent fairy, but now we know that he's a fairy vampire, but that's another story. But yeah, here he's kind of a dick, but he's one of the Australian Jaeger pilots. And yeah, I mean, at this point, they're kind of like showing off the appetizers. You can figure out which ones are going to die and which ones will not, but, you know, whatever. I would have to say I was very pleased with his co-pilot. Since his brother died, he needs a co-pilot to his old Jaeger. They get Ruchi something, I don't know her last name, but it's funny, they name her Mako, which is the name of a very professional Japanese actor. I don't know if they were paying homage to that, because I don't remember him being in any any giant monster films, but he does do a lot of work in anime and animation, so I figured that's, I mean, he was General Iroh, so, I mean, there's that. But yeah, basically she plays his co-pilot. She's got to pass to, her whole city of Tokyo is devastated, go figure, Tokyo being destroyed by a giant monster, imagine. And she loses her family, and Idris Elba is her father figure, and there's a great scene in the film where the pilot goes inside her memories because they share a bond. And it was at that point I was like, this is good that they're taking this very seriously, to the point that it's not just the giant, you know, rock'em sock'em giant robot movie. There's at least some attempt to detail, and if you're going to travel into someone's brain, you may as well take advantage of that element. I always love that. I love those type of films like Inception and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I thought that was really cool, and it kind of goes back to Japanese anime, which tends to do that too, kind of like Ghost in the Shell, and I never watched Neon Genesis Evangelion, so I don't know if that references that, but it probably does. Well, yeah, that one's got giant robots anyway, so whatever. Yeah, so where was I going? Oh yeah, basically she becomes his new co-pilot. There's a team of scientists. One of them is played by Charlie Day, and going into this film, I'll be honest with you, I was a little worried because I know Charlie Day. He's not a scientist. Every character he's played so far has been idiots. He's always played the moron. And they gotta take advantage of that element somehow. You can't make him into a scientist. And I kind of like how they handle the character in the film. He's kind of this, he plays not an idiot savant, but he plays an eccentric scientist we've seen in most films. Kind of like, I'm definitely thinking of a character. I mean, he plays Charlie Day as a giant eccentric. He's like Emmett Brown from, he's kind of like Emmett Brown, and I got a little worried because he was kind of reminding me of Newman's character from Jurassic Park, Wayne Knight from Jurassic Park, but thankfully he didn't go entirely into that direction. But he plays as eccentric, and I like how he was handled in the film. He wasn't too annoying at times. I got a little worried, but so far he handles himself pretty well. His co-scientist, another scientist he works with, is more of a mathematician, who's played by that guy from The Dark Knight, who at this point I think is a very good actor to go from a character like he did in The Dark Knight to transition to this this cartoony, nerdy scientist with integrity, and it's a lot of fun to see on screen. But at one point in the film, well, because this is a Guillermo del Toro film, we gotta have Ron Perlman, and the character Ron Perlman plays is this black market dealer of kaiju parts. Yeah, the giant beasts are called kaiju, and he's trying to sell. The Charlie Day character wants to buy a brain from him so that he can have a neural drift with the brain, since it still operates when the body dies, in order to see where these things are coming from, what they can do to stop them. Again, some very interesting story elements. This isn't just giant robots fighting giant monsters. There's an attempt at story here. There's depth to it, there's complexity to it, and if you're gonna go into this film thinking that it's just gonna be rock'em sock'em giant robots, you're not gonna be disappointed when they do have time to take back and focus on the humans. The story is about them. They're in the wartime. They've got to figure out how to stop this, and I love that. And every scene is crafted beautifully. The stakes are really high. There are primarily three action scenes to pay attention in regards to like the big fight scenes. There's one in the beginning where the main character loses his brother. There's a second one where he and the female pilot Mako are fighting two kaiju by Tokyo, not by Tokyo, by Hong Kong. And there's the one at the end where where they have to go and close the drift by setting off a nuclear bomb. And I mentioned this earlier, I'm going to allude to it again. It must be something about Japanese culture being linked. I mean, I wouldn't blame them for being linked to something as devastating as a nuclear bomb, but it really pays homage to the roots of Japanese anime and where it comes from. And even Akira does that too. The fact that the these suits are powerful and they have side effects to them, like the Idris Elba's character was a pilot to a Jaeger, but due to years of exposure to radiation, it caused them to be sick. Kind of the fact that they focus attention on the radiation shows that they're trying to make an homage to seeing what works about, I wouldn't even call it, what works about this this sub-medium of animation in Japan. It's culturally bound into it, and I'm kind of glad that they're realizing, it's showing that Guillermo del Toro is reaching in and kind of embracing that. And I don't know, I thought it was kind of good. Otherwise, I want to congratulate Hal Hickel for working. He's the animation supervisor. I follow him on Twitter. I think he follows me back, but if you don't know who he is, Hal Hickel, he's worked with ILM, Image Light, the Lucasfilm subset of animation. He worked on Rango, he's worked on the Avengers, and he's also worked on this film. And I want to congratulate him because his work is fabulous. So the stuff he's coming out with, he's like the modern day Harryhausen. These films are just action-packed, great animation. You can appreciate as fun action, but you can also appreciate, if you're into animation, as just being very beautiful to look at, especially the end credits. I'm not saying that as a joke or anything, but the end credits are just fabulous. The whole action itself, the way the robots are fighting the monsters, I like how it takes its time. It shows every frame in motion. It isn't just the camera shaking back and forth. It isn't like Clash of the Titans, which fucking pissed me off. The fact that it can never keep the camera still so that we can focus attention on the monsters. At least the camera focuses still, and even have like double takes. One punch here, and then the same punch from another angle. And a lot of style. Every frame feels like there's an attention to detail. Definitely love that aspect of it. Kind of glad they spend time with the humans. They're not just cardboard cutouts. Okay, maybe the scientists were kind of cartoony, but otherwise there is depth. I mean, at times I mentioned that it can get a little cliched as far as like action films go, but that's generally, I mean, some cliches work. Some character tropes work in film. If you just ignore them entirely, or even be self-aware, it doesn't mean that you're going to be good. So it's kind of good that they have a movie that's okay, I'm not saying it's self-aware, but a movie that embraces certain cliches for the better. Did I really have any problems with this film? I was worried that it would never end. I got worried that the movie was ending. I kind of wish that they would expand this universe. Maybe see a prequel with the younger Jaegers fighting younger kaiju. Or maybe even if they do have a sequel, which I doubt they will because it was a very self-contained story within one movie. Kind of disappointed that we're not going to go see this universe again, this world. I was fully embraced in it. It was lovely. Very lovely to look at, very action-packed. I would recommend this film to the the animation crew, the guys who love animation, the guys who love action, love Japanese anime, the otakus would love this film. I mean, the ending had its Independence Day type moment where they do close off the breach and they travel into the mothership, and they're even looking back at the aliens in like that same scene where Jeff Goldblum and Will Smith are looking back at the aliens, but instead there's this giant mech suit falling in and self-exploding. Again, back to the whole nuclear bomb thing. And what can I say? I just really enjoyed this film. I recommend checking it out for yourself. Pacific Rim, Mountain Theaters. It's better than seeing Grown Ups 2, unless you like comedy, but I doubt anybody's going to want to see that bullcrap. I would even say it's better than Man of Steel. I probably enjoyed this movie more than I enjoyed Man of Steel, which is to say I still loved Man of Steel. I enjoyed that film a lot, despite what critics have to say about it. This movie, on the other hand, I think was more of a crowd-pleasing type of film. I think if there's going to be people that will complain about it, I think most people who just wanted to go in and see the giant robots will be disappointed, but I think they'll be disappointed at the whole, the human characters. They were like, oh, I don't want to see this boring story with these people. But to me, it mattered because it gave the characters depth, some humanity. It made me care about them. I cared about the main character. I cared about the female characters. It was very... I don't know what else to say. I just really enjoyed this film. I think you'd get a kick out of it if you watch my show, The Cartoon Palooza. If not, well, you know, there's always Man of Steel in theaters. Otherwise, take care. That's all I got. Again, I'm short and simple. I'm not like Spoonie. I'm not going to go for an hour and a half talking about this one movie. But really, that's all I have to say. I found it really enjoyable. I might think you might like it if you like my show. I like animation and Japanese anime. Oh, take care.